Howdy ESSM 406. Today's lecture, number 5, is about dangers. So in this brief lecture, I really want to see and talk to you about some of the dangers that I can see for this class. So the first danger I'm talking about is the rush to judgment. So this is something I really believe is increasing in our society, and I think we can find quite a bit of evidence to support that. It seems that we live in an increasingly polarized society. And I don't really know why. Perhaps it's the 24-hour-a-day news cycle, the increased number of information sources, or the ease with which almost anyone can publicize their own ideas. The latest scandal will grab the headlines, or fake news. What does fake news really mean? Our society is increasingly political, and this class is in part about politics. So there's a lot of research out there that shows that people tend to look for news that confirms their already held beliefs. We have friends that are around us that often think what we think. Our family feels what we feel, and we're not really exposed to a lot of diverse viewpoints. In fact, some research shows that when someone is given evidence that conflicts with some of their core beliefs, they will actually believe even more strongly in their ideas. A quick example of that is some research was done with people who believed that the 9/11 attacks were an inside job, that it wasn't Al-Qaeda. And if you provide them with evidence showing them that it was Al-Qaeda, that there were terrorists that did this attack, they will often dig in and they will increase their certainty that there was a conspiracy, and you, in fact, will be part of that conspiracy then. So, being a conspiracy theorist sounds a little kooky, but there's evidence that suggests that there's many of us that really hold on very tightly to our core beliefs instead of being open and critical of these ideas. So in this class, I really want to encourage all of you to avoid that, that we're going to focus on analysis, collecting evidence, and providing careful argumentation backing up what the evidence suggests and what our values are. So my expectation for you in this class is to pick a topic that you're very passionate about or that you're just interested in and you want to learn more about. I want you to give it a really thorough vetting and a systematic review. So you're going to have 5 memos to start with. And I want you to go through the careful steps of crafting an analytical framework, collecting data on all sides of the argument. And I don't want you to express your opinion until the very last memo in the class. I want you to think through your issue critically. Do the analysis. Why is there a conflict? Why do people have different opinions about this topic? What are the underlying causes of the environmental argument? And then in your final memo, after you've done the critical analysis, after you've collected all these viewpoints, that is when you're going to be able to make the strongest argument backing up your opinion on this subject. And I'm going to be really excited to read what you guys come up with. Another danger I see coming out of this course is really confusing policy with politics. Like I said, things are getting really polarized here, and it hasn't always been that way. Same as the way politics are currently structured hasn't always been that way. It's considered almost a permanent state of things, but it's actually quite a bit different, and it's been different in the past. There's a lot of research that the people that you vote for, it tends to be more of an emotional vote rather than an analytical vote. Sometimes people will vote for someone they just have this emotional connection with, even though they don't really understand where that particular politician may sit on the value spectrum or on the policy spectrum. So, for an example, there's a tendency today to associate the Democratic Party with the mainstream environmental movement, and to associate the Republican Party either with anti-environmental, anti-climate change, or even in certain parts of free market environmentalism. We'll talk more about what all those mean later on in the course. But you need to be really careful with this for a couple reasons. First, like I said, this is a modern phenomenon. What's considered liberal and conservative are fluid. The states we consider being associated with political parties, so-called conservative or liberal, that's a very recent idea. As another example, most of the US's environmental laws were signed by Richard Nixon, who also created the Environmental Protection Agency. At that time, Richard Nixon was a leading conservative. So he was a Republican, he was a conservative, and he played a role in creating some of the most important environmental policies the US has. Furthermore, he was from, at that time, what was considered the leading conservative state. This state also produced our other most important conservative president, Ronald Reagan. That state, of course, was California, and which we now associate with being a very democratic state and as being very liberal. It's also worth remembering that Nixon replaced the most liberal president, arguably, in American history. This president was from a leading Democratic state, the state of Texas, and the president was Lyndon Johnson. So we should not confuse ourselves by relying on labels, but rather we want to be analytical. What do these people stand for? What do they think? How do they come into power? What is the meat of the policies that are being implemented? Another danger is to think about where we're getting our information from. Oftentimes, what you see on the news is really biased. Many of our news sources are highly partisan, and so we want to be very critical of what we're listening to. For example, Fox News is extremely conservative, and it's often very biased on the right, whereas the Huffington Post is quite liberal and biased towards the left. So it's really important to be critical about where you get your information from. A study found that viral stories found on Facebook that falsely claimed the Pope endorsed Donald Trump and that Hillary Clinton sold weapons to terrorists received more attention than the most popular news stories on vetted news sources. This can also be really dangerous. There was a false story circulating about a child trafficking ring in Washington, D.C. in a pizza restaurant called Comet Pizza. There was a North Carolina man went up there with a bunch of guns and was going to save these children that he thought were in danger from a false news story. So I just really want to remind you to be very critical of your news sources when you're gathering data to support your topic. It's really important to think about this when we're talking about values and policies, where emotions can get involved. And that doesn't mean you should write off everything as fake news if you don't believe it. It simply means you need to diversify the information you consume and consider your source as you consider the information. Finally, it's really important to separate the analytical tools we're using to analyze policies and the tools we use to analyze politics. The tactics and political strategies of political actors is another piece that you should think about. Political actors will often say things that they don't mean. They'll obfuscate what they're saying or hide what their true intentions are and hide behind rhetoric. So what we want to do in this class is we really want to use some analytical tools and careful research to get beyond these simplified versions. And this could be hopefully something that you take throughout your life to help you be a more critical thinker, to help you analyze stories that you are reading or hearing on the news, and to make yourself a more educated decision makers. And we're going to try it out with our memo. So I'm really excited to see what topics you all choose. If you have any problems with it, give me an email, come by my office, go to the Writing Center. Remember, that's a free resource for you, and you get extra credit if you go. Just let us know what help you need. We're really excited to have you in this course, excited about this policy making memo that you're going to write, and I wish you the best of luck.